Hi, it's Donna here from Clever Crafting. Thank you very much for joining me today. So today we're going to make this cute little mosaic card. We're actually going to make the background and cut it up and then use some embossing powder and add some of our little Christmas icon dies on the front. So this is actually part of our Christmas icon card makers kit. I just wanted to quickly show you, in all of our kits that we sell, you get a little booklet. Now in the booklet, it's got the designs that we do in our classes. So you can see here we've got a picture of the design and all of the materials lists, and these are all of the notes. So just so you know that this is what we're working from. Today we're starting with a 12 by 12 centimeter 250 GSM piece of card, and this is the stencil that actually comes in the kit. This is made out of 100% recycled product, and I have sprayed the back of it with repositionable stickies so it's sticking down. I'm just going to start by putting some yellow in the center. You can see that I'm putting mustard seed. I use the Tim Holtz Distress Oxide inks normally. And now I'm going to go in with picked raspberry, which I'm going to do all around the edge. I'm loving these nice new little brushes that I'm using. I think that they're particularly good for stencils. So now the picked raspberry I'm going to do very lightly. Not going to make you watch me do all of that. So you can see that with the magic of film I was able to cut all of the boring stuff out. And I am just going to reveal our stencil there. Now I have kept it quite light because I do want it in the background. I'm going to use some pine needles now, which we all know is quite a dark Distress Oxide ink, but we'll use it just lightly. I need some masking tape, so that's just some paper tape, post-it note, mint tape, whatever you want to call it. Now I am just positioning my stencil so that one of those petals is actually going between some of the other petals that I've already stenciled. I'm going to grab some of my post-it note tape. I don't need a lot, so I'm going to cut it in half because we all love to preserve our stash as much as possible. Just popping that over so it's covering where I've actually stenciled the flower underneath. And now I'm going to add the pine needles, the bit of green, into that stencil area. Now you'll also have noticed that with these three colors I'm working off the lid. Generally when I'm adding extra ink to my brush, I tap it off on the inside of the lid so then I can use it a little bit later. To be honest, there's hardly any ink that we use when we do it this way anyway, but still, once again, as crafters we love to conserve all of our stuff. Alright, so you can see that what I've done here is I left the stencil where it was. I've just moved some of that, moved that masking tape, and I am stenciling another one of those petals. And can you see now they are leaves at the back? I've done a couple of extras now. Once again, chopped that out so you didn't have to watch the boring stuff. And you can see we've got those lovely petals around the outside of the poinsettia. Now I've gone back to the book here to show you that we've got a cutting guide listed in the book. We always do that when we've got cutting or scoring. Right now though, I'm going to cut this in half, and that's at 6 centimeters. For those of you that don't know, that is my attempt at sign language there, because we do have a few people in the deaf community that like to watch us. So now we're cutting at 6 centimeters on this side as well. So basically we are cutting our 12 centimeter by 12 centimeter piece into 4 even parts. So each one of these little squares will be 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. You can also see that I'm putting them over in the side there and keeping them in order. This is really important. So now I'm going to grab the upper right hand piece. Now you could actually use any of these pieces, but you want to start off with a piece and use the diagonally opposite one next. So we are going to cut this in half at 3 centimeters. So we've got 2 pieces at 3 centimeters. We're going to take the first piece and we're going to take a tiny little piece off that inside edge. So we're going to put that over, and when I say a tiny little piece, I'm talking like 1 mil or 2 millimeters, only a tiny little strip off the inside edge of that piece. Now we're going to do the same on the other piece. I'm going to turn it around and cut off a tiny little piece. This is so we've got room between these pieces without affecting our outside border. So this is 3 centimeters. We're going to cut this one at 3 centimeters. So we've turned it on the side. So we've cut that in 3 centimeters as well. And we're going to cut the other one at 3 centimeters. So you can see that what we're doing is reproducing what we did with the original piece, which was we started with a 12 by 12, cut it into 4 6 by 6. Then we started with the 6 by 6 and we're cutting it into 4 effectively 3 by 3, but we're trimming off a little bit at the pieces. Now can you see with that one, except I was too busy talking, I cut off a tiny piece off the middle edge again, so from the top piece and from the bottom piece for the same reason. So we've got some gap between these when we put them on our base piece, and it'll be nice, but keeping the outside border even. All right, so I'm just going to stack them over there, and then I am going to do the same with the diagonally opposite piece of card, so that piece there. Once again, not going to show you that. I want them both to be the same, so there we go. All right, now also in the kit, or if you've got it in your stash, if you're following with the goodies that you've got in your stash, is I'm using a sheet of double-sided paper. So I can't even tell you where I got this from because I've had it for a fairly long time. So you can see that I've cut it into an A5 piece, and I've lined up this is the 13 centimeter by 13 centimeter piece of card. You can see the measurement at the top there, and I am popping that on the sticky, so the whole side is covered in sticky, and then I'm going to just trim around the edge. Now you could do this with double-sided tape if you wanted to, that's fine, but you need to make sure that the tape is covering the whole piece. So you can see here that I've just pulled back a little bit of that release paper because I don't want to get everything sticky. I'm going to move all my pieces down back into camera so you can see them, and I'm picking up one of the 6 by 6 centimeter pieces, and I'm lining that up with a nice gap around the outside. Okay, so now I am going down the other end. So I've spun it around 180 degrees, and I'm going to get the other corner. So now you can see here what I'm going to do is spin that back around, make sure that I've got that the right way, just checking that it's the right way. And I am just having a look at the top one to make sure that I've got about the same edge around the outside, and I'm going to secure that one down as well. So now what I did miss off camera is I put then the corner one up at the top. I put the outside corner one. The reason that I did that, and I lined it up with the two pieces, the larger pieces that I put on, and I did that so I could put this little piece in the middle and everything should be fairly even. Now I do want to tell you that the gap between the small pieces is going to be smaller than the gap around the outside edges of the big pieces. All right, I've removed all of the release paper now because I find that a little bit easier to work with, and I've put it just back over the sticky area so I don't get stuck. Now I did put a piece on without putting glue on the background. You don't need the glue to secure it. You need the glue so you can move it around a little bit. So in case you put it in the wrong spot, which I did with the piece before, I didn't show you that of course because, well, who wants to show you mistakes on camera? So if you use some glue though, you're able to move it around a little bit. So now that I've done those first 4 pieces, I'm going to do the other 4 pieces. And this time though, I'm going to start in the center piece. So once again, I forgot to add glue on the back of this, but it turns out okay for me this time. And you can see that I used the other gaps to line it up where I wanted it to be. Whoop, and I am going to add glue. Once again, you don't need the glue to secure the piece. You need the glue to be able to move the piece if you put it in the wrong spot. I'm actually lining this up along the outside edge because that's the important part, and that gives us the illusion of tiles or a mosaic, a pretty picture of a mosaic. And the more careful that we can be with this, the better the end result. So take your time with this piece, with this part of the card, because you will be really grateful if you do. And you know, you're likely to have a few blowouts to start off with, but the glue helps. By adding a bit of that moisture on the back will help. So take your time, hold your breath, and you'll be right with that. Okay, so they are now all stuck down. Happy days. This is just a piece of scrap paper I'm going to pop underneath my card, because remember we've got all of that sticky part still exposed, and I'm going to use some silver embossing powder. Now you would have seen on one of the ones that I showed at the beginning there was one with gold, so you can use silver, gold, green. You can actually use any color embossing powder you have, but my collection of embossing powder is pretty limited to silver, gold, white and clear. So I've decided to go with silver on this one. Now you'll also see that there is some of that embossing powder on the area that I don't want to emboss, because I only want it on the sticky. So I'm just going to use these couple of paint brushes that I had sitting on my desk, and I'm going to get rid of all of that excess embossing powder and then just heat emboss it all around the edges. Once again, I kind of chopped that out so you didn't have to sit watching me do that. And here is the end result. Yep, it's lovely. All right, I'm just going to glue all of these pieces onto my card base. So my card base it ends up being a 13.5 centimeter by 13.5 centimeter card base. I've just popped glue on the back of that 13 centimeter by 13 centimeter piece, so it gives me a nice black edge. I'm just going to put some glue on the back of my Christmas tree that I cut out in green. And I put too much glue on, so that's just a bit of scrap paper, and I'm just dabbing a bit of that extra glue off because I don't want it squelching out all over my background. I just die cut a Merry Christmas out of some of that glitter cardstock. The glitter cardstock also came in the kit. So I want to put something on the inside. So what I've done is I've used some fun foam or some kids foam, and I've cut out the same Christmas tree because this set is just a die set. It doesn't come with stamps. I've just put some double-sided tape on a stamping block, and I am sticking my Christmas tree foam cutout on the block. Now I'm just going to grab some of the pine needles, which is the same color that I used on the front. This piece here is a 13.5 centimeter by 13.5 centimeters, so same size as the matte layer on the front. And I am just going to stamp my Christmas tree in the corner. So I used, as I said, pine needles, and there it is. That's fantastic. So now that will just stick inside. And this is our finished card. It's a beautiful one. Of course, you can use this not just for Christmas, but for any type of card that you would like to do, birthday card, thank you, any of those things, of course. So once again, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today. If you've learned something or if you enjoyed this video, I would love you to subscribe or give me a thumbs up. All of that helps our little channel get a little bit further. I hope you all have a wonderful and safe Christmas for 2025. Well, actually forever really, but 2025 is when I'm doing this. And until next time, please stay safe and happy crafting.